Hello, my friend, and I hope everything is well with you. Today's topic is rather a very important and sensitive matter. It's about the divorces, especially among us Catholic folk. But before we proceed, let's agree and clarify a few points. In the Catholic Church, there's nothing called as divorce, all right? There's no divorce. Once you're married, okay? The church could could extend to you an annulment of the marriage, right? Which basically means that based on the application and evidences provided by one of the partners, one of the spouses, right? The church could declare, it has the authority to declare that the marriage was, never valid in its first place. It's as good as it never happened, all right? And there are very, very few criteria based on which this can be done. One of them, for example, being that either one of the spouses, all right, was in a state of mind and a condition where they never knew what was happening. They did not realize there was an actual marriage happening, okay. This could be one of the reasons, okay. I'll list a few of those reasons down in the description below if you're interested to know more. But yes, we need to understand that there is no divorce in the Catholic Church. Yes, an annulment could be offered, all right? But for the sake of simplicity, yes, let's use the word divorce in this video too, all right? Now, there's also another very common thought that divorces are increasing of late, right? Which means in the recent years. Well, is that true? Let's move on and see. We'll talk about that more, right? Now, my question is, why do divorces happen in marriage? But before that, why do marriages happen, right? The boy marries because he needs a woman. The girl marries because her family, and maybe the girl too, feel that she needs a social security, especially after the parents die, right? This is a very, very common reason, especially in a lot of Asian countries such as India, right? Now, these are wrong reasons. These are wrong reasons, right? You must get married when you're so full and abundant of love that you're ready and willing, so overflowing to share it with somebody you love, somebody who's very, very special to you, all right? So let's ask a question. Is marriage required at all, right? I think that's a very common question running in the minds of several youth today. Is marriage required at all? And I would say an absolute yes. An absolute yes, without an iota of doubt, right? And to understand that better, we need to go back in history. You see, years back, our forefathers were nomads, right? They were just travelers aimlessly roaming the deserts, right? And they used to go in groups. So very often what used to happen is when a lady delivers a child, that was literally the end of her role, okay? She could leave the child in the crowd and keep walking, right? And the child would grow up along with many, many other children of similar ages with any mother that was nursing the baby, right? So today the baby could be nursed by a particular mom, and tomorrow the baby could be breastfeeding with another mother, right? This was reality. And what also happened is men used to walk in different groups, women used to walk in different groups, and sometimes they meet together, right? So if you can imagine a situation like this, a scenario like this, where the father sees his daughter after 12, 13 years, all right, for the first time. And he has no way of knowing that that's his daughter. And guess what happens? Those days, very much like what happens today in the animal kingdom, right? Two males, such as the big cat, for example, the big cat family, lions, tigers, and so on, two males fight ferociously to claim the female, right? And this used to be the situation with humans as well those days, all right? So people are going forward, and this man looks at a girl likes her, and if required, fights with another man to have that woman, not even, knowing that she is probably his own daughter or even his own granddaughter for that matter, right? Not very different from what happens among dogs, right? Or among, say, a prized bull or a horse, a stallion, right? True, this is exactly what used to happen earlier. So trust me, my friends, marriage is the number one advancement towards civilization at all. Okay, absolutely the number one advancement towards civilization. So why do divorces happen, right? I would say the first and foremost thing is because we enter into a married relationship with wrong expectations, right? Parents, society, sermons, movies, they all try to portray to us that marriage is a bed of roses. Life is wonderful, right? In fact, parents fight so hard to hide their differences from their children, albeit small differences, fair differences, but they try to keep it away from their children in a sense of protecting them, yeah? And talking of movies, the guy who has actually married 6 times in real life is in front of you on the screen receiving an award for a best married couple, right? So these are some of the things that sort of lead us astray into believing that marriage is a bed of roses. And we're also given to understand that marriage automatically happens, automatically works out between 2 people because they are an ideal couple. But trust me, my friend, there's nothing called as an ideal couple. There's nothing called as the ideal wife or the ideal husband, including you and including me, yeah? So it never happens. Now, it is very important that we realize this fact, and one or the other, or both of the couple, right, commit to really being, committed to this, cooperative in this, willing to give away, willing to shed away their egos, their angers, their resentments, whatever it comes along the way to make the marriage work. Because unless you want the marriage to work, it is not going to work, all right? Let me give you a very good example on this, right? Now, you buy the best of the breed of a rose plant, for example, and come and plant it in your very, very fertile soil, okay? And then you forget about it, right? What's going to happen? The rose plant is going to wither away, all right? You need to make sure that the rose plant is watered, that it gets sufficient sunlight, that, the land on which it is there is properly taken care of, all right? Everything you need to do with that, probably put some fertilizers that are required and so on. Only then it's going to grow into a beautiful rose plant and give you the beautiful roses that you're going to enjoy all your life. Otherwise, you just plant, you forget about it, and there it goes. After a couple of days or a couple of weeks, it's going to die away, all right? Or it's going to become a useless bush, right? So it is so much so true in your married life as well that you, as a party, need to involve, need to commit to make it work. We seem to be in a hurry to decide whether this relationship will work or not. We do not want to allow sufficient time to make the relationship work. There's a saying which goes that love is for 60 days and the attraction or the desire is for 30 days, all right? Now, this seems to be very true. And in that time, we find so many disturbances, differences, between the two, between the couple, right? Somebody is going to share my house, my room, my bed. That's a very disturbing thought for most of us, right? Well, she doesn't get up as early as my mother used to get up. He leaves the bathroom slippers on top of my shoes. Well, she squeezes the toothpaste from the middle. He leaves the wet towel on the bed. So many differences irritating differences and quite fair too. So let's divorce the other person. What? Well, did somebody tell you that he or she is coming to you with a 90-day money-back guarantee, as most of the things happen today? Is it like an agreement you have when you do a business deal that if I'm not satisfied with this, I'm going to return it back and I want a full 100% refund, no questions asked? No, my friend. This is a marriage relationship, right? A commitment that you made. Actually, if you see, this happens in many situations in life. We take up a job, right? And once we are there for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, we realize that this is not what we had as an expectation when we started working. The company is not as great, the bosses are not as great, the products are not as great. What do? Do you divorce the company immediately? Right? You don't, right? You try to make it work. Or let's imagine a situation you are flying at a 32,000 feet height in an aircraft and you don't like the seat. The seats are uncomfortable. The food is not as great as you wanted it to be. What do? Are you going to jump out, call it a divorce? You don't do that, right? You have to make sure, you have to really make efforts, right, to compromise on some things and make the best of the situation. True or not? Now, several years back, I wrote a book which was about real happiness in marriages. I was selling this as an ebook online, and many people who bought and read the book would call me, connect with me, and seek my advice, thinking that I'm a marriage counselor, which I'm not, right? But nevertheless, I was happy to have a chat and see if I could help them, right? Now, one of the things that came about very clearly, very often, is that a common complaint, especially among men, was that I don't understand my wife. I can't understand my wife. My question is, why do you want to understand your wife? Is she a research paper? There is a need to try to understand her, right? And another thing that came about is, the people were apparently living together for several years as a happily married couple, but they had differences, right? And this is a very, very important factor to realize, because everybody has emotions, everybody has sentiments, everybody has feelings, right? And there's nothing wrong or right about a feeling, right? Your thought could be right or wrong, but your feeling is always right. You can't argue on that, right? It's a feeling. You can't tell somebody your feeling is wrong, right? So that is something very individualistic, right? So make sure that you do not hurt a person's sentiments, the feelings, just because they are your lifelong spouse. One of the very common mistakes we do in the married life is taking our spouse for granted. You take the wife for granted. You take the husband for granted because they are caught with you, right? This can never happen. Marriage is a commitment. You have to make it work. There's a very nice story of a newlywed Italian couple, right, on their honeymoon, and they had planned to go up the mountains, and they were on two mules, right? And as they were climbing along, the young wife's mule sort of stumbled, okay, and the wife looks at the mule and says, "That's the first time you've done it," okay. They go a little further, and again the mule sort of trips and stumbles. And the wife looks at the mule and says, "That's the second time you've done it." A little further, unfortunately, the mule stumbles again, all right? And the wife says, "Well, this is the third time you've done it." And she draws her pistol and shoots the mule right in the head, okay. Now, the husband says, "How could you?" He's shocked. He says, "How could you?" Right? And she turns to him and says, "Well, that's the first time you've argued with me, all right." And several years later, when somebody asks the husband, "What's the secret of your happy married life?" He said, well, this is what happened in the first day of a wedding. And after that, I didn't give her a chance to have a second, mistake from my side. Right? Well, jokes apart, this is true. We need to compromise. We need to agree that life is all about giving and taking, right? But the question is, why should you make it work? Let's look at a few reasons. Reason number one, your wife or husband is absolutely going to be very, very different from you. Yeah? Because when you're born with your kin and kin, when you're born with your brothers, sisters, you're comfortable with them, you grow up with them, you have some amounts of commonality between all of you. But your spouse is coming from an absolutely, totally different background, and they are going to be different from you, right? That's an understandable fact, right? But you need to take time to understand your spouse. You need to step back and see and enjoy and feel the beauty. And you will realize that your spouse, even though very different from you, is an amazingly beautiful person, right? Give it some time. Who knows? Maybe when you are extremely sick, that is when the spouse will have an opportunity to express love and care for you, as it happened in my case. Well, for those of you who don't know my past, I've had 2 heart attacks, all right? And the first time I had my heart attack, I was in a common ward. And, when I woke up from my sleep, from my, anesthesia, so to say, there was an elderly gentleman there, and he said, God bless you, son, you will never have any problems in life. And I'm like, well, thank you for your wishes. He said, no, it's not that. The whole night when you were unconscious, all right, when you were drugged out unconscious, your wife was here, even though this is a common male ward. She was kneeling down with her hands outstretched, and she was praying for you the whole night. And when you have such a supportive wife, nothing can happen to you, right? Now, this is something that, I owe it to be grateful to my wife for that, right? And if you don't have a chance yet, when your spouse has not been able to show you that kind of love and affection, be happy in a way, right? But because you don't have to really get sick and, then wait for your husband or wife to show you the love and affection and caring, right? Now, also be very careful that a lot of people may not openly show that they love and care, right? The second reason could be that, you probably won't find a better one out there, right? You probably know the saying, a known devil is better than an unknown angel, right? And this could be absolutely true. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say your biggest complaint is that your husband is an extremely angry person, right? Now, you might be surprised that a lot of people who look so peaceful outside, so calm and quiet outside, even some people who are very spiritual, or some people who have been meditating for years and years, right? Right within them, they are extremely angry people, right? I mean, you might be surprised the kind of anger that can explode from them, yeah? So who knows what's on the other side yet? Now, a third reason could be that if you have children, that's it, nothing more to be said. In any situation where there is a separation, where there's a divorce, right, the most affected people are the children in the family, without exception, right? Unfortunately, whenever there is a breakup between the parents, the children suffer the most, right? And it is a duty to consider that, as much as you can, right? Now, the fourth reason is that from the church's perspective, from the Catholic Church's perspective, marriage is a sacrament, period, right? You entered into the sacrament, you promised in front of the Lord, to take your spouse for life, in good times and in bad, in sickness and in sorrow, till death do us apart, all right? So that is it. And as they say, the commitment, the promise that you make with your tongue and with your heart is actually stronger than any agreement, than any legal document or the loopholes therein, right? So once you have committed, you have to stick to that. You are in it for life, all right? And that's your commitment which you have made in the presence of God. But so all that said, does it mean that you have to live with your spouse no matter what? No, absolutely not. There could be a lot of situations which are beyond repair, all right? I know a lot of situations, for example, where, there was somebody who would actually burn the wife's hands with a cigarette glowing end, all right? And I'm told that it's something like, thousands of degrees centigrade, extremely, extremely hot, extremely painful, all right? So maybe he was a maniac, right? I know somebody who said that when she was in the winter cold in France, her husband, if he used to get angry because of certain physical needs and she was not able to cooperate, he would actually, throw her out of the doors, okay, to stand in the late night in the winter cold of a place like France, okay. I know somebody who used to kick his wife, or at least attempt to kick his wife in the stomach when she was pregnant with a baby, right? There's no reason absolutely why somebody should tolerate this. They need absolute help, right? Take help, no doubt about it. On the other hand, the very, very common complaint could be infidelity, for example, right? Now, question to be asked is, why is it happening, right? A. B, is it happening only from one side, right? C, is it something that can be set right? Okay, now let me give you an example. Long back, I used to know a lady who, I knew that she was comfortable, having relationships with some of her other friends. And I distinctly remember what she told me once. She said, "I'm not a sex-starved woman. I'm a love-starved wife," all right? And she actually explained to me that her husband actually got her everything she needed, all right? A car, a nice house, jewels, and so on. But he never had quality time for her, okay? Ever since they got married, okay, she had nobody to talk to lean on when she had differences, problems, challenges in her mind, whatever it is, right? Anything that bothered her. And then she needed a shoulder to cry on, and that extended a little more, and that's how it started. So her words were very, very, meaningful. And that's the reason I asked, is that person singly responsible for what's happening? Is it the other person who's also causing it in some other ways, and so on, right? So these kind of things, even though they look like or are major, problems in married life, well, you probably could look at it as to where is the problem? Is it in its infancy? Can something be done about it? Is the other person really sorry about it? Was it a one-off? And so on and so forth, right? And maybe, right, with the right kind of dialogue and, probably external help if required, such things could be set right. So are divorces increasing these days? I really don't have the statistics, but one thing very important in our Catholic churches, it talks about our erring in thoughts, words, and deeds, right? Not only in deeds, not only in actual divorcing, but in thoughts, words, and deeds, right? So, well, in that sense, divorce in the mind is not new, right? Forgive me for saying, especially if you're a spiritual leader or a priest or, preacher or so on, this could be a conflicting statement. Even in Matthew 1:19, it says that Joseph, right, Saint Joseph, thought of divorcing Mary, right? So in certain versions it says he was betrothed to her and he thought of separating. But here it says, it uses the word husband, it uses the word divorce, all right? So the thought did come to St. Joseph even those days back, even with Mary, Mother Mary, yeah? And this is a very important point to think about, right? I think that most couples would go through this situation at least once in their life where they are sort of thrown aback. Is this what marriage is all about? Is this person the one I fought for to have as my spouse? Did I make a mistake? Should I continue? You know, a lot of things like this could be entering people's mind at some time or the other. And like I mentioned earlier, when those people used to call me, based on my book, to have a discussion with me, this is something that came about from many, many people, all right? Your spouse could be living with you for 50 years, 70 years, 80 years. But remember that every person has emotions, feelings. And it's very delicate, like, a glass. If this glass snaps, cracks, it could go beyond repair because every person has a last straw kind of a level, right? It could be the last straw for that person. But for social reasons, for religious reasons, for legal reasons, for financial reasons, somebody may stay put and stay as your spouse for years and years on, but it might mean that you're just living a namesake successful married life, right? So be very, very careful that you do not take your spouse for granted, that you do not hurt their sentiments and feelings, all right, with your words, with your actions, right, with, taking them for granted and saying something so loose, so casually, but something that might hurt them, and stay with them throughout their lives, right? This is something very, very important. But if you do feel that there is something that is seriously wrong with your partner, with your spouse, and you do need an annulment, do approach the church, do approach the priest in your parish. And very important to remember is that if they sound don't care-ish, if they sound as if not interested in what you're saying, if they are going to delay the process, do not get vexed. Do not get upset and walk away and try to do something else, right? They are trying to seem not interested because they're actually interested in you. They're actually interested in you. As it is said, time is a healer of many wounds, right? So the person on the other side is hoping that if they delay the process, right, if they make you go and come several times, maybe things are going to get, themselves sorted out, things are going to work out among you, and so on and so forth. So it's very important that you give it sufficient time to not only make it work, but also approach the annulment in its proper process, right? Now, a lot of people take this as a hindrance. And what they try to do is they try to just go and separate from each other and then sometimes enter into another marriage. My friends, it's very important to understand that without a church annulment, official annulment from the church, you are not yet officially separated in the Catholic sense. Even if you have a civil, divorce, it doesn't matter, right? In the eyes of the church, you are still married. And therefore, when you start living with somebody else, when you think you're married and you start living with somebody else, you're not actually living as man and wife. You're actually living in sin. So imagine your biggest complaint was that your husband cheated you, right? He went out on a one-night stand and he cheated on you. And imagine now you're going to be doing that all your life with somebody else, right? You're going to be somebody else's concubine, male or female, right? These are strong words, but these are the truth. Somebody needs to tell that plain and simple, right? Unless the church offers you an annulment, you have no right to start living with somebody else, all right? Even if you think it's a marriage outside the church, or, some people say, I stood in the church and, put on the ring or wore the, thali or whatever it's called. No, sir, no, ma'am. That's no marriage. That's not officiated by the church. So, at the risk of repeating myself, be very careful to understand this, all right? Because if you do so, you are living outside the marriage sacrament. You're living in sin. And to go on that point, often people do not realize that, well, how does it matter? I'll just live with somebody else, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm officially married to him, and they continue to receive the Holy Communion, which is, again, not allowed by the church. All right? It's not allowed by the church. You cannot receive Holy Communion if your marriage has not been annulled by the church and you are again living with somebody else, even though you think I am married in the civil court or whatever it is, right? So be very careful of that, my friend. These are very important. And today what happens, people think that, well, with all these problems, why enter into marriage at all? Let's have a live-in relationship. No different, my friend, from what I just said, right? By living together with somebody, you are not living a married life. In the church's eyes, you are just a man and woman living together. You are living as a concubine. Okay, this is the truth. Okay, you probably do not understand that. Don't tell me it's cultural differences. Do not mix culture and religion. These are totally two different things, right? Yes, in certain countries, culture seems to allow it, seems to accept it, society seems to accept it. That may well be the case, but culture is different, society is different, and religion, our Catholic religion, is different. So if you want to call yourself a Catholic, you need to be aware of this fact and you need to take care of this, all right? Finally, I'd like to leave you with the words. Yes, married life has its own challenges, but it has its own beauty as well. There'll be wonderful moments in your life. Treasure those moments. Look for that one good thing in your spouse. Nobody is all bad, right? Everybody has something that is good in them. Look for that one little, wonderful thing in your spouse and be happy for that. Be grateful for that. Live with those differences, just like there are different seasons in the year which makes us enjoy life so much. Learn to enjoy the differences, get used to them, and I guarantee you that you'll be a happy person all your life. You take care, my friend. God bless.